Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's another month, so you know what that means. It's another Chichester Chats. I told you got to record that jingle so we can play it every month. All right, so yes.
Get Mikey Flash to do it.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah. Get all the effects and stuff.
Is it in the style of the old, the old Marvel, animated things, the Hulk thing? Captain America throws his mighty shield and stuff. That would be cool.
Oh, he asked for it. It's your show, man. Oh.
Hey guys, it's good to see you both and hear you both. So thanks again for the chance to come back on the podcast that has my name. So I guess it's good that you invite me to it. So
always, sir, always. We couldn't do this without you. So yes, it's great. It's great talking to you once again. This time we were talking Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. 7 through 10. I believe your first arc on the book. Mm-hmm. So again, let's start at the beginning. How did you get this assignment?
Well, this was I mentioned Greg right before, a good friend and a good comics ally. And this was an instance of just an unexpected opportunity. Bob Harris had not relaunched Nick Fury, but certainly got a lot of attention back on the character with a mini series that he had done, which was Nick Fury. It was a maxi series. I don't know. But it was Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D., which, is great, a great title alone. You don't even need a story, although it certainly had one, by just twisting things around that way. So that got a lot of great attention and did pretty well, I think, in terms of sales. And so it had relaunched the Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. book. So Bob was the writer on that. But Bob was a little bit involved with a couple, 3 books called the X-Men.
Only 3?
As the editor, a couple 30 books. So he was the editor on that line of books, which I don't know all of his circumstance, but I have to imagine that being the editor of that line and also writing has got to impact your time. We were talking about that before you turned the mic on, how people juggle their time. But so he had fallen behind on some of the timeline of the book. Greg being a really good editor, both in terms of story, but also in terms of production, sort of saw this ahead of time. It wasn't like they got to issue 6 and said, oh, geez, we're in trouble. He was sort of able to identify, all right, things aren't going to quite match up here. I want to do a little bit better than just pulling a fill-in issue from inventory and try to make it up that way. So he figured if he created a 4-issue story arc with somebody else and another team working on it, that would allow the book to get back on schedule with Bob. So he knew that I was interested in working on some other things, and he, I think, really knew that I was a huge James Bond fan, and that would probably look at Fury as an opportunity to play things off that way. So he basically approached me with the opportunity. There was no sense that this was going to lead into anything else. It was a 4-issue story. Pitch me it, so it wasn't just a given. I don't think he was going after multiple teams, but I still had to pitch a story and say, okay, what's going to happen in these 4 issues, and came up with this half-baked, approach. We'll talk about the villain and strangeness, there. Although he's really an interesting villain when you think about it. Oh, yeah. And made enough sense for him that we're able to jump right in and had a lot of fun playing out a combination of James Bond and probably late 80s, early 90s action thrust. It's got that sort of geopolitical, Tom Clancy, Hunt for Red October, Under Siege, sort of feel to it in a lot of ways. And it was great. It's great to be able to play with that character. And I think in a lot of ways, opened my thinking to playing within the bigger Marvel universe, being able to pull in some other characters and references, which I hadn't really been able to do that much before.
I mean, mission accomplished, because this was the first time I was reading this, and immediately I was like, I have to ask him about, it's very James Bondish. So, I mean, you accomplished that.
I was, your sensibilities change as the properties change, but I was an enormous Bond fan, and collected
books and movies, or
books books and movies. I think I first came into it through the movies, probably seeing a few of them, and probably seeing them on TV, and being more picking up on the more salacious elements of them as a younger kid. It's like, oh, she's not wearing much or anything. And oddly enough, I think I probably came in through the Roger Moore window, although I would later come to appreciate Connery more, but still appreciate it more a lot. But my grandfather had an entire bookshelf, Lilith, of the original paperback set, which maybe isn't that big a deal, but to me they were sort of
it is
this. It was kind of like this holy relic, like on the shelf in his office library, and I was always kind of mystified by them. To look at the covers and the titles, are just so great. Ian Fleming did such a great job with the oddness of the titles, and so then later, after my grandfather had passed away, my dad gave me those paperbacks, and then I would read them actually finally. So they're odd. Have you read the books?
Yeah, I prefer the books to the movies. So
yeah.
But I like Fleming more, so what do I
No,
know?
no, they're good. I mean, they're different, in their own way. There's certainly qualities of them. Yeah, and Fleming's got a sort of a stilted writing style in some ways, but they're definitely, I think, worth the complete picture. But anyway, between the books, the movies, collectible, things I would pick up over the years. I go to toy shows, and I, somewhere around here there's there's some of the old, there were like these great like little plastic figures that were created like in the 60s or 70s, and I remember buying a set at the toy show, and I must have killed the vendor because I immediately opened the packaging, so he was like, "What are you doing?" But I want to play with them because they had like a little rotating pool table from Goldfinger and things like that, so I was totally into that. I remember I had a chance to buy it. I found it at a junk store in the East Village in New York. They had the James Bond attaché case from Russia with Love, which kind of came with like a little secret pistol, hidden coins. I mean, it was great, and but it was a little pricey, at the point, which I'm sure probably meant $30 at today's dollars, but at that point it seemed outrageous. So, but anyway, yeah, huge Bond fan, and so it was a perfect background, to play Nick Fury against and off of.
So you didn't need like your little file. You were just like, no, espionage. I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, I mean, there was some.
I don't know. I saw Stealth Bomber. I heard those pages flipping in that notebook.
Definitely. I mean, the tech of the stuff, the Stealth Bomber was kind of going on, things like that. I think I might have gone to Larry Hama at one point and kind of grilled him on technology, because Larry was, always up on military tech, and I think I may have asked him a couple of questions about, how would these things run, or certain ideas that way, because as you guys know, I like to sort of invest myself in some of the research of the technology, especially to sort of find, is there something we can do with that from a story point of view.
See, he could have crossed over with his G.I. Joe, because I mean, he was writing G.I. Joe. I believe he's still writing G.I. Joe.
Oh yeah,
he will always be writing G.I. Joe.
I mean, he created that world. That's if you've seen, I'm sure you guys have that Netflix series, The Toys That Made Us, right? Larry is at the center of that story because he has to be, much as Bob Budiansky's at the center of the Transformers story.
I know, but just decades on G.I. Joe. I could tell, it's like Hama must love G.I. Joe. He's been on there since the early 80s?
Yeah, but to his credit, and I think this is why he's on it, is it's not the same as a there used to be a book series called I think it was called The Executioner, and it was by a guy named Mac Bolan. And these are like pulpy novels. And Mac Bolan was a sort of a punish. Mac Bolan was the executioner, I think. I don't think the author was. I can't remember who the author was, but but he was sort of he was a Punisher-ish, figure, predated all these things. But every book was essentially the same. Is my point. Falls into bed with three women, massacres, half the mob, amasses, a huge collection of weapons, maybe not always in that order, mix, match, rinse, repeat. But Larry, to diverge into good territory for a moment, I mean, what could have been a one-note, series, became a totally enriched environment of characters, points of view. I mean, nobody who read those books is ever going to forget that silent, Snake Eyes issue or any of those type of things. He just went, places with that is the investment of somebody with a lot of interest in a world like that, but then the ability to kind of say, you know what, I'm not restricted by the toy license. I'm creating the toy license. I'm creating this world, and I'm just gonna run with it.
All right, so let's get back to another comic genius, Mr. D.G. Chichester. You mentioned that villain. So what was the
what's the inspiration?
Yes.
Yeah, Leviathan was an interesting combination of things, and definitely there was a lot of stuff going on then, as there is now. With religious, cultism and people sort of swaying followers over to them. Certainly that was a big heyday of I would say, I'll call it for what it was at the time, right-wing Christian evangelism. There were a lot of preacher, types, and a lot of them some of them were legit, but some of them were con men. And that was definitely a sort of thing that feels like it was kind of pulled from, because he ultimately he starts off seeming like he is a cult leader, but he's really got a little bit of Alan Rickman from Die Hard in him, where he's, where the whole thing is a front for him to advance his political mercenary agenda. He could really care less about, this cult-like thing that he combines. But I have no idea why I would have combined so many weird, disparate elements. I mean, he's got a patois, right? He's, vaguely Jamaican in origin or something like that. He wears this strange helmet that looks like it was lifted from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And then he plays this whole cultish leader, yet he's involved with this high-tech heist. If I was to look at it now, and I do look at it now, and I'm sort of saying, you could have picked any one of those and probably worked pretty hard. Why did you kind of mix them up? That may have been an instance of way too many things in the swipe file, or maybe I reached into the wrong one. There's like 4 of them, and I reached into each and pulled out a different reference. But whatever I ended up doing, I think we ultimately sort of committed to it. And he became this sort of very imposing figure, for the course of the story, and allows you to sort of play out, I think, as a good foil for Fury and his team, with a beginning and an ending, excuse me, that didn't create any complications for Bob as well, because that was, I'm sure, thinking about it now, part of the mission is have fun, but don't screw things up for Bob, right? Pick up on what you need to pick up from where issue 6 is going to be, but don't leave any loose ends or things that he has to, clean up coming back into 11.
Well, that thing at the very beginning with the UN and stuff. So was that a Bob thing, or was that your idea?
Remind me of the thing with the UN at the beginning. What happened there?
It was just basically the Fury just has to report to them every so often, but otherwise he's basically like his own. Basically just
Yeah.
reports them every quarter, but otherwise he's his own entity and doesn't have a
Thank you.
boss really.
Yep. I think that was sort of the structure of his team. The way that we, probably, a bigger think of where they were going to be going. Probably a little bit not from Bob necessarily, but sort of the structure of what the book was. So that was feels like that was probably a nod from Greg of do this, set this up, and then go off and play in your own space for a little bit. Touch points within the the context of the world. Lump as a character, right? That was not necessarily. I didn't dislike Lump necessarily, but I wouldn't have created a Lump or put a Lump in with this espionage team necessarily. But you make to say I was going to say you make good with what you have, but that sort of sounds disparaging to it, and I don't mean it to be. If you're really going to invest yourself in a world that you're playing with somebody else's toys, and at that point they were Bob's toys, I think you try to be respectful of what you're doing. I mean, that was my approach. I certainly know. I've certainly known writers, in creative teams who come into something and do. It's almost like how much damage can we do in 2 issues, before we go off into another direction. But that wasn't my intention. It was to expand and play and have fun for myself. Right? All of a sudden, I get to write an espionage movie. In essence, I mean, that was in my head. I wasn't writing a comic book. I was writing an espionage, James Bond movie.
So is it more in your head than...
You can't get rid of that film school kid, huh?
No, you can't. I mean, it's and I think that's, if writers could draw, we'd be useful and dangerous, and, but it's a visual medium, and you have to look at it from a visual sense. And I don't compare comics to film. I think it's unfortunate that we have to write and put things forward in those terms sometimes because we don't fully have a language that's different enough on their own, right? So you're still writing close up, long shot, camera pans in. I mean, these are all terms I've used, and I think other writers use because it's the best you've got. But obviously, there's a big difference. But my film school and film thinking and film enthusiasm is allows for that. It allows for that, yeah. Otherwise, you set up a proscenium arch, and it's sort of like it's a one thing, and it's a play being acted out in front of you. I have a good friend who's made a lot of videos, and he's won a lot of awards with different video festivals. And he is a master of dialogue, right? He loves dialogue. He loves the play of characters and terms and the things back and forth. But he's become so dependent on it that, he's limited himself in terms of the visual aspect of it. And he knows that. So now he's trying to kind of break away from the dialogue to think more about the visual effects of what he could do with his films. And I definitely tried to do that even in describing things, within the instance of a story, any story, but this one especially.
Well,
it was very fast moving, definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely. So fast that speaking of visuals, how did you feel when they spoiled your big surprise at the end there? I know you don't control the covers, but the penultimate issue, Fury's flying in with a shadowy figure, and before you get to reveal it in the last issue, right there on the last cover, Captain of Side by Side with Captain America.
Well, that's
marketing.
That's different. That's different than say the non-giveaway I think I described. In the Black Widow Punisher thing where I didn't get to see the visual. It's the opposite. They don't give me the visual at all, and I have to describe it all in words. That's got to be that's the smarts of a sales technique. I mean, you're not gonna you're trying to boost the sales. I don't think Cap was I call him Cap because I'm so friendly with him, like Ant-Man. But I don't know. It certainly wasn't a sales draw like Wolverine, but it's another boost of it, and it's a bigger part.
Too.
It does, right? There's all that history, right? And that makes perfect sense. And there was a lot of and certainly I would return to that dynamic, later on in Daredevil and play out, Cap and Fury and all those characters as well. But I didn't. That didn't even. I don't think I even saw the cover, Phil. Honest to God, I'm sure I didn't. I'm sure I never even saw it until they sent me the book, maybe. But Greg, I might have seen it in the office if I went in to look around. But I don't remember it rankling me because it was just. I would have known it was a sales technique.
See, kids, he just does it for the love of the game and the free comics.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, when you used to get comp comics, man, that was the best. That was the best part of like being in the business, when you'd get the entire stack of everything from Marvel for the month. And when I was an editor, that was even better because DC would send you the entire stack of what they did for the month too. There was a mutually assured sharing, between the two companies. So all editors would get not only everything that was in the Marvel stack for the month, but DC would send you all their goodies.
Oh, wow.
Wild. Modern comic book creators could never.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they still have that arrangement, or if their corporate overlords have shut that down.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they probably don't do that anymore, but they can play. It seems like they can play ball when they want to. I mean, that whole George Perez thing. They're reprinting the Avengers and Justice League crossover.
Talk about good in the world. That was I don't know if you saw that picture of George Perez. I guess at the table where they showed him the comp or the cover of it, for the first time. But I mean, that guy's got so much spirit and positive energy. It was just captured in that photo. But I think that was, from what I understand, and this is sort of two steps removed from a post that Fabian Nicieza had put up. I think that was just a combination of 4 or 5 specific people who've known each other for 20 or 30 years.
Okay.
Sven Larson, Marie Javins, Jim Lee, a couple of others, basically, who are at the top levels of those companies or close enough to them to be able to go in and say, we need to make this happen. And so it wasn't DC, quote unquote, Marvel, quote unquote, making nice and saying, look, we can do things. I think it was people saying, this guy's not going to be with us much longer. Let's just do something right and getting it, through, which probably also that's probably why the limited print run, plays into it, there as well to some extent. But yeah, that's a terrific book. And I hope some people are able just to get their hands on it and enjoy it for what it is, as opposed to it. Yeah, right, exactly. As opposed to it becoming an entire scalping, mechanism, and the people who get their hands on it are flipping it on eBay for 12 times the cost 10 minutes later.
I mean, it's good PR for them. I mean, it's good to do this for George, and I mean, it's win-win-win all around. So I don't know why they wouldn't do it.
So, what's your favorite issue in this?
I have it over there. It's too far to reach. I'm gonna actually say I think the first one, just because it sets things up and it moves in emotion, and from a creative point of view, it was a chance to kind of kick everything in gear. And then I kind of knew where it was going to go, but there was a lot of unexplored territory, and I was now writing something that was part of a larger world. I'm trying to think if this was the first Marvel thing that I had written, because I had been so involved in the Nightbreeds and the Hellraisers and things that were outside of Marvel per se, with the exception of maybe a fill-in issue on this or an inventory issue on that. So this might have been the first extended run on something. So I think that sense of energy and uncertainty was a good thing at that point. Like, I could do no wrong in my head, although certainly I could do a lot of damage. But it was that strikes me as probably just my favorite, if not in the sense of execution, Lilith, in the sense of possibility.
Did you put extra?
I like the penultimate issue, just so I can say take a drill. I do like the penultimate issue. I like that build up, that tension. For me, that was my favorite.
Well, it's probably a good sense of things too, because when you're doing these things in semi-real time, sometimes you're setting up that tension in the penultimate issue, and you're saying, geez, I really got to solve this by the next one, don't I? I can't let anything like bleed over into 11 or whatever, because I got to be done by 10.
Meanwhile, you two intellectuals, I'll say the last issue because I like Captain America.
Well, Cap was always fun to play with. Cap was a great character. Is a great character. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you got the espionage stuff down now. I would have been interested in a run from Captain America from you, but I guess there was probably no opportunity because Grunwald was on there for 10 years.
Oh yeah, I mean Mark was a genius with that character and loved it. He loved the character.
Oh, you could tell. Yeah,
the thing that genuinely. I mean, sometimes I remember reading it as just a fan and a reader and sort of saying, man, I want some more of the action, and because Mark would do the everyday as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in retrospect, that demonstrated his real appreciation and love of the character. And I got to play with Cap, a 3 times that I'm really pleased with. Within Daredevil and especially the Blood and Glory Punisher Captain America series I did with Margaret Clark and Klaus Janson. That was, to me, just somewhat defining in terms of the history of Captain America, but I got to play with him in a totally huge story against a big tapestry of things going on, the conflict between the World War II Vietnam era with zero complications. I didn't hear one word of anything on that story. I mean, feedback editorially, of course, in a good way, but nothing like, no, you can't do that. Your office doesn't have Cap, or your office doesn't have that. They don't have the Punisher. So that was just like a great chance to play with him.
Nice. In this book, I mean, you were telling us about your love of James Bond. Did you put extra pressure on yourself? Because were you thinking, hey, if there's ever any opening, I want this book, if they're looking for a full-time writer, or were you just in the moment thinking, you know what, I'm just going to do this 4-issue arc and whatever happens.
I think Greg was pretty direct, because Greg is very direct, about this isn't an opening for something. There was no expectation Bob was going to be off the book, although he would decide to leave, a few issues later. It was Bob's book. It was a very clear help Bob out, help me out, meaning Greg, and you get to play with some toys you're probably going to really, really enjoy, characters you're going to really enjoy doing, because, again, he knew the things that I like to do and that I had interest in. So there wasn't a gaming of it. There wasn't a sort of a nudge. Hey, Greg, didn't I do a great job on this? Wouldn't I do a great on a regular book? If Bob leaves, I'm here, for you, that type of thing. It doesn't feel like that was, that would have been something I would have played with. Doesn't sound like trying to remember specifically, but it doesn't sound like my personality. It doesn't sound like my relationship, with Greg. And I do remember very clearly that being a sense of, it's a scheduled fill-in story, treat it like that. And Bob's got this, kind of going on. So, later, as things would develop, I think the fact that I did a good job in Greg's mind, maybe the reader's mind, and the mind of maybe some other editors at Marvel that Greg consulted with for advice and that sort of thing, that would definitely come into play, where when the book opened up, that wasn't an audition. That was, it's yours if you want it. Right. So that was nice that this served as a calling card for that, and then proved that I could write Fury and play within that world. So when I would use Fury in other things, I don't think there was ever any complication of do you know what you're doing, or you got to check with such and such, because it had become a given that I knew what to do with this character.
So how quickly did you accept when they gave it to you full time? You're like, oh, I get to write James Bond every month. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that we had finished the complete sentence before I said yes. There was no consideration of anything else, and I probably would have pretty much dropped anything else to be able to do that. But that became, a good. Well, I'm trying to think again against timing and stuff. And I think that was I think that was the real solid entry point, not a fill-in, not anything else, into the Marvel universe. Because remember, I'm coming from Epic, right? I'm an Epic editor, which is like, what do you do over there? Writing a bug. Seriously, I mean, it was comical, Lilith, in the sense of, and really good people, really smart people who I considered, friends then, and some who I'm still, very much in contact. Just had no understanding of what we did in Epic. Both in terms, they didn't read those comics, they didn't understand what we did in terms of storylines.
So fundamental.
A
lot of people that we interviewed come from over in that.
It's comic. If it was in the Marvel universe, they didn't want to know about it. But I came from there editorially, and the things I had been writing were not, with the exception of a handful of fill-in issues, were not Marvel universe things. So nobody read quote unquote Nightbreed or Hellraiser or these things. So I was a kind of an unknown quantity, and then I would know specifically that writing Fury regularly, then becoming the regular writer on Fury would be the opening for Daredevil, because, well, again, I had to pitch Daredevil to Ralph, and that wasn't a given by any stretch. Ralph's initial response when I called him and said, I understand that there's an opening, could I throw in? It was like, he was very polite, but it was the politeness of like, sure, not, if you want to, knowing,
sure, kid.
You could almost, exactly, sure, kid, knowing the other half of the sentences, but there's some real writers pitching this too. And, but I knew that Ralph liked the Fury work a lot. And that was an important thing. He liked what I was doing with Fury, and he liked that I was playing with things in Fury from the Marvel universe that were, because Ralph was a big, fan of Marvel continuity overall. So he liked the fact I was picking up on things and bringing them back in. The whole Hydra thing would become a major, major part of honoring the history, but also pushing it forward. Although it was like a sub-universe, because nobody else ever paid attention to what we were doing with Hydra, really. We would do all this cool Strucker Hydra 2.0 over here, and then everybody else had them running around smocks and, and being cannon fodder over here. But whatever.
I mean, I didn't do my homework. I should have. Do you remember how long you were writing this book before you got the Daredevil job?
I don't. I mean,
okay.
Enough months to make an impression. But
yeah, I was going to say, I know it wasn't like years and years and years, but
yeah. I mean, and because it wasn't probably that long. Also, just in the sense that I didn't feel qualified for Daredevil, but it was because I remember when I got the news that Ann was leaving. And it would be Steve Bucelato, who was my friend and had been an assistant editor and editor on things I had worked on, who called me and said, Ann's leaving the book. I think you should pitch it. And he's the one who said, Ralph really likes your work. Ralph likes what you're doing on Fury. He was giving me that sort of encouragement. But I was like, what are you kidding me? Like, Daredevil's like a real character. Like, Nick Fury's, Nick Fury's cool. And Nick Fury's like over here. Daredevil's like here, right? Daredevil's like front and center. I'm not ready for that. But that was an instance of like, why the fuck not? It worked out pretty well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it must have liked your work. How many years were you on that book? Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to ask a controversial question. Don't. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. How do you feel about the David Hasselhoff Nick?
I think he looked great, didn't he?
He looked great.
I think he looked great, actually. I think, I will say that he looked awesome. I mean, when I saw that, I didn't expect great things of it, because any TV property based on a comic book from that time invariably was trash, right? It was sort of one step removed from the ISIS, Saturday morning, live action, kids special, or even better, the Shazam one, if you remember that one, where they're driving around in the van and stuff. The recreational vehicle from I don't know, from Olympus. But but he looked great. I thought when I saw production still, or one of those promo things, I thought, wow, he's got a good look, and it's got a cigar, I think, and it's got the costume-ish thing. But obviously, once he started moving, then it became something else entirely. So, but it's I don't think he ever would have been great, because he's a limited performer in a certain way. But also just the way maybe every production at that point, nobody took it seriously. It's a comic book. We'll trash it up, and if it's not trashy enough, we'll make it trashier. We'll give it like more bad pulp features to play into the comic bookness of it, and so, but I to this day, I will defend his look. The Doctor Strange one looked pretty good too. If you ever see that, he looks now. If you really want the highlight for me of David Hasselhoff is King Fury. If you've ever seen King Fury, then he's amazing in that. Have you not seen that?
I don't think so. No.
Oh my God, you two have got to, after this, if you have actually a breathing space between this podcast and the next one, go find King Fury. Or Kung Fury, I'm sorry. So Kung Fury is a 14 or 17 minute film made from Europe that is like a parody homage to the action and kung fu movies of the 80s, 90s. Totally over the top, and they got kickstarted funding for these cheesy but well done special effects. And Hasselhoff, sings the theme song. So it's pretty.
Yes.
It is pretty amazing.
Who was born in Germany, I like David Hasselhoff singing.
There you go. It is amazing. It is truly amazing. There's a character called Hackerman, because they have to hack time to go back and fight Adolf Hitler, and then there is a partner on the police force called Triceracop, who is half police officer and half Triceratops dinosaur. So it is mind-blowingly awesome. So
what I feel like Charlie's going to want us to review this, Lilith.
Oh my God! If you have not seen this, guys, I've just given you. Believe me, I've given you a gift for the weekend. If you come back next episode and tell me you didn't like this, then I'm going to feel I've misread you. But
limited actor, sir. He acted against the car for 4 seasons. How dare you?
Well,
that's Mr. Feeny, damn it.
Perfect, yeah, perfect within that zone.
I remember, man. I watched that when I was like 6, 7 years old, and I thought that was high art. And now I go back and watch it, I'm just like, ooh, oof.
Yeah, it was amazing at that point. But it had a great gimmick. It had great.
You only had 4 channels, Phil.
I know. Yes,
true that.
But I enjoyed this. I'm not like really a Nick Fury. I'm a Sam Jackson Nick Fury or Ultimates to say Fury kind of guy. But going back, this was fun for sure.
It is funny when you say that.
Old man Fury.
No. I mean, that was the thing. You could play with that, and certainly some people did. The person with that extended life and feeling weary over time and everything he kind of goes through. And but it is odd. I'll tell you, going back in and rereading some of the stuff, because much like you, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson is burned in my head at this point. He is, from the moment he walked in at the end of Iron Man, and sort of like, I'm Nick Fury, I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. It's sort of like, oh, that's Nick Fury. I remember turning to my kid, at that point, he was so young, it's like, who's that? And it was like trying to explain what was about to happen, maybe. And and then watching it happen over time, and then going back and cracking open a comic like this, and well, that's Nick Fury, but that's there's definitely a disconnect. So,
no, I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I wasn't sure. I mean, I knew you were writing it, so I was going to enjoy it on some level, but I'm like, yeah, just like Lilith, I've never been the biggest fan of a solo Nick Fury. I'm used to him showing up in a Captain America or even your Daredevil run and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, this is good, because back in the day when this was first coming out, I remember not being aware of it at first, because okay, again, kids, I'm old. I don't remember seeing it a lot on the spinner racks or newsstands and stuff. And I remember reading your Daredevil. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a Nick Fury book out there, man. I gotta try to find that. So I'm sure that was part of the purpose of putting him in that, like, you know, like Last Rites. It's like, oh, hey kids, look, we have Shield stuff going on over here too.
Yeah, and Nick, you know, Fury could be used in different ways. I mean, leaning into him with his own book, you've got to expand the reach of the characters. I think if I was to go back and think about Fury again, you know, if I think I probably held on to the team structure a little bit longer than I should have, right? In a lot of ways, I think I should have blown the team up in some ways, not just for the sake of blowing it up, but you know, I continued, depending on what Bob had done for these 4 issues that we're talking about today. Like I said, that makes perfect sense. That's respectful. That's good for Bob. That's good for the editor. Yeah. That's good for what follows. Once I took it over, I liked parts of the team structure, but there were also things I kind of held on to because, well, that's the continuity that's established. But at that point, I could have done anything I wanted. In some ways I did, but I could have blown it up more. You know, his relationship, his romantic relationship never probably really tracked for me, you know, as much as it should have. I could have blown that up and gone, you know, in other directions with it. And probably I was getting toward that after Hydra really kind of attacked Shield in a lot of ways, and I might have been smart enough to do things then. But you have to lean into him and his world and expand it a lot more within the fabric of his own story. Everywhere else you use him, he becomes, and him and Shield become not a quite antagonists, or sort of the way to get you out of stuff, right? And that's what, and so that's, you know, they prod things, they introduce things, sometimes they save things, they seemingly kick certain things in motion, or they get outwitted, like in Daredevil, in certain places. So they're great foils to acknowledge the larger Marvel universe without having to kind of sometimes go really deep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the most, you know, I love when people, you know, always get down on the Marvel universe films and say, well, they're all the same. And to me, and maybe this is just me, but I actually find the choices they make in a lot of them to be extraordinarily daring. And the first time that really kind of came to the fore for me was when they blew up Shield in was it Winter Soldier? It was Winter Soldier, yeah. Right? And they blow up Shield, because up to that point they were sort of using Shield in the same way. Shield could come rolling in, Coulson could show up, Fury could do this, and you know, Shield would be there to pick up the pieces or introduce the technology, and they were there, you know, Deus Ex Machina, you know, to play things out. By blowing Shield up the way they did, and you know, Shield is infiltrated, and Shield is this, and Shield is gone, then it's like all bets are off, right? It becomes it's a more challenging story to have to tell than Shield is going to be here to create the conduit between this and this, or be the technology, or the giant aircraft, you know, helicarrier can show up at any moment. So I think that was within the comic spectrum, at least when I was doing it, that was the fun of Shield, is they could show up at any point. Fury could show up and be, you know, the observer, or, yeah, I've got this piece of tech you can borrow, or, you know, I'll take care of that for you, or I'll put you in touch with that assassin or something. But it could also become, if you weren't careful, it could become a great convenience, right? Because then it's like, I'm leaning on him. So he's a convenience, a good convenience, you know, sort of in that Punisher, you know, Black Widow story, because he kicks it off, right? He's able to kind of be there, give the Widow an assignment, and then have a little bit of a coda at the end, but he doesn't really play much of a bigger part in it.
I mean, that's what I always say. I'm like, you know, love it or don't love it. You know, you could tell they have a plan on that Marvel side. I'm sure they know what's coming in 2025 and stuff. And
absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's just, and it's amazing. It really, I, you know, as a film fan, you know, Lilith, you know, go back to that. It makes me uncomfortable when I see a lot of my film heroes dissing on the Marvel films as much as they do. You know, you get your Coppolas and your Scorseses, and like, these aren't real movies. You know, the public doesn't know what they're doing.
They didn't call you to direct.
Exactly. That's exactly my contention. Totally. But it's sort of like they're different films. But I mean, there's a lot of great structure and thinking, and nothing like this has been achieved before. You're up to 25 films at this point or something, that actually have interconnectivity and characters showing up, actors showing up in this way. It's insane. It's really admirable.
Yeah, but my biggest disappointment, and I love Coulson, is that, I guess they couldn't afford Sam Jackson. I get it. But I'm like, he should have really showed up in the S.H.I.E.L.D. show more.
Yeah, I think...
that was my biggest... I was like, you have the whole Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but no...
Did he show up at all? Didn't he show up like in one episode or something?
Yeah,
or,
what was that?
What was that? The Thor episode, the Thor crossover episode, or whatever.
Maybe that one. I thought there was
like
I thought there was a finale early on where he showed up, like season 1 or season 2. So yeah, he might have showed up like twice, maybe. Yeah, it wasn't anything though.
Yeah, but you want Samuel L. Jackson to show up and have like the field, right? That's the thing, right? That's you sort of introduce him when he's not a cameo. He is the thing, and or if he is the cameo,
he's the meat.
Exactly. So we'll see what he does with the secret invasion, type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was so.
Yeah, it's just such a rich history, and you did a really great job.
Oh yeah.
You had fun with it, most importantly. I think sometimes people take the character a little, and that's kind of a turnoff for me. It's like espionage in the Marvel universe. Like,
oh yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, it gave me an excuse to buy a book I'd wanted to buy, forever, which was called getting back to the clip file, it was called The Dictionary of Espionage, and I may still have it. It was just such a great little book that was just so filled with quirky espionage terms from within the trade craft, and I remember poring over that book and highlighting so many little things to try to, whether I brought it into this story specifically or reference it, once I had the regular run on the book. That was a place where the research paid off and made it feel, richer, as it were, and yet had fun with it. You can't play with all the gadgets, all the possibilities, all the outwittingness of villains against the heroes within that espionage world without having some fun to it.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, great job, because it's like it's the Captain America formula, except Captain America's this larger than life symbol. Fury's a man, and it's like he's basically been in espionage since at least World War II, and it's like so.
He's definitely Murtaugh.
Yeah,
you get too old for this. I know.
Yeah. It's if I again, knowing what I know now, if I was able to kind of go back and think about it more, I think I might have played into that some more. Not the old man spy aspect of it, not the man out of time aspect of it, as with Captain America, right, that type of thing. But I think there probably was more I could have done, actually, Phil, by leveraging that World War II. I've been doing this since World War II. Mm-hmm. This history of these sort of things, of that experience, and where he could have maybe been pulling some gimmicks or techniques or tactics or understanding from that. That would have been a really interesting thing to play with. There was a really interesting quote, probably you guys have heard it, this Christopher Lee quote from when they were making Lord of the Rings, and the sound effects or the special effects guys were setting something up with I guess, when Saruman is killed or whatever, or something, or maybe it was one of the orcs were killed with like a knife. And he said to them, that's not the right thing at all. And what are you talking about? It's like, I know what it sounds like to knife somebody to death, because this guy was in the special forces during World War II, right? He was part of the espionage unit. So he didn't talk about it beyond that. But, this amazing, imposing actor, had a history, in the Office of Special Services, which predates the CIA and those type of things. So, drawing those type of things from somebody who had really been, quote unquote, involved in a Fury way would have been an interesting play on the character to kind of get into more.
So there was no like editorial mandate where it was just like, oh yeah, you can mention World War II, but don't like beat people over the head with like this guy is almost literally 100 years old.
No.
Okay.
I mean, now there might be. I mean, I don't know how they're handling. Well,
we got a new Fury now.
It's all
Yeah.
Samuel L. Jackson, so they don't play it off in that way. But I don't know how do they deal with Cap these days? Do they play Cap as still World War II, or I imagine they have.
I think he just stays in the ice longer.
The ice gets longer and longer, so now he doesn't come out of the ice until like 75 or something.
Something.
Like that,
I don't know if they ever give a specific date, but yeah, it seems like he stays in that ice longer and longer. So,
right. Poor guy. So that's too much.
Because that's the other thing. Because it's like, yeah, Cap goes into suspended animation. He had that serum. It's like, I know didn't Fury take something to prolong his life?
Yes. I want to say. What the heck's it called? It's not the.
Was it Lazarus or
it's not, I think
Infinity?
It's the Infinity.
Infinity formula or something.
Yeah, it's an Infinity sort of thing. Yeah, that's it. I mean, he's got an extended, life, which was the ability then to take him from Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos when it was originally a World War II book, and now we want to jumpstart it into the 60s, 70s, and play off of the James Bond craze, right? So. That was where the impetus, really became. Let's use this character here, give him this tech, give him this ability to play things out against that platform, the popularity of those properties, but make it its own thing. But that was I think it's the Infinity something. But that would have been really cool, I think, to go where you just went a bit more than I ever did.
Oh yeah, it just hit me. It's just like a story where he's like, I want to die, but they won't let me die.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for this man, Lilith, or should we let him go?
No, I think we covered this very thoroughly. It was always an enjoyable Chichester.
Thank you, guys.
Oh yes, thank you.
It's definitely something different. Good choice, Phil.
Oh, you want different? Wait until next month.
It's not going to become Fury, I guess. What's it going to be?
No. I don't know why I picked this for March, but I wanted to talk about your story from Batman, the 80-page giant #2. So DC, a little different.
The Huntress one?
Yes, I was going to say, but it's not a Batman story, so some of you in my audience can calm down. Yes, it's a Huntress story, yeah. Although the Riddler's in it, so...
Yeah, two interesting characters to play with. Absolutely. That's a neat one to choose.
Yeah, and we talk about a lot of Marvel here, so I figured, a little something different, DC, and is it?
Yep.
I'm giving Lilith a break here.
You don't read any DC?
No. I read like Spider-Man, Daredevil.
No, she's more DC than Marvel.
Yeah. With DC, I'll read anything. Ambush Bug.
Anything.
Whatever.
Booster Gold, you're all there.
Lilith, I can't help it. This man built his house on Marvel. Come on.
I know, and I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm a Daredevil fan. It's like your basic top 10, Marvel characters.
You take the opportunities where they present themselves. Yeah.
Hey, I know that. I mean, Daredevil is my Chichester gateway drug. That's how I discovered all his other stuff is through Daredevil. All right, so next month, the Batman 80-page giant #2 with the Huntress story.
Great.
All right. So, sir, tell everyone where they can find the newsletter.
Thank you, guys.
Else?
Thank you. Always good to have a chance to plug it. Please check out when you're not listening to one of these two fine folks' podcasts. Visit storymaze.substack.com for my newsletter. Occasionally has some sound and video and writings and other observations about the work I'm doing then and the work I'm doing now. And it's a fun weekly time.
And also, kids, make sure you look at, we have a new official Facebook and Twitter account now for the Chichester Chats. So I've been trying to share the Story Maze links to these episodes. So
very cool.
Oh, are you going to be allowed to show your Filmora runner-up video? I'm very curious.
Which is that? What's that?
Did you have a Filmora runner-up?
Oh yeah, yes. I'll send you guys the link to that. That was it was it's a weird little thing, but it was a 24-hour contest, so I think I'm forgiven for being up way too late. But
yeah, send it to me. I'll share it. I want to see it. I want to see this too. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, guys. This is always fun. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend and a good month, and we'll figure out the date for a dance with the Riddler.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye.